Welcome everyone, thanks for having us here today. It's a great pleasure to come and tell you about Amazon Alexa. As mentioned, I'm David, I'm the Principal Evangelist for Alexa in Europe. So it's my job to come and tell you about the Alexa Skills Kit, what you might build with Alexa, and why we're here, more importantly. So it's all about why we think you should develop conversations as well as developing applications. I used to be a head of mobile in my previous job, so I get app development very well, but I've seen the future and think this is where we need to go, and that voice experiences are the next big thing for us. So hopefully in the next 40 or so minutes, because I've been told to try and get through this quite quickly, and we'll tell you as much as we can about that. So think about voice experiences generally. Most of us, when we're born, the first thing we do is speak, but in terms of technology, we've actually gone backwards as a group. We think we've got grey boxes in corners, we press buttons, we swipe. You know, horrible grey boxes that really aren't what we do as people. And we think we've actually gone backwards over the last 40 years to where we start as people. So I'm talking to you now, and hopefully you can understand what I'm saying, hopefully. Being Scottish, you might not get the accent sometimes, but we think going backwards to voice is really the natural progression we should have started with 40 years ago, but technology didn't really make it possible back then. And you think the emotions we have, we talk, we feel each other, and we understand each other, and that's the natural interface that we're trying to achieve with the advancement of technology. And that's really what Alexa's all about. We will talk a little bit about development, and it's important to understand how you do these things, but at the same time, it's all about conversations, treating people as humans, treating technology as human. And that's hopefully what you're going to go away with today. And it's all about changes in technology over the last 40 years or so, which tend to happen in decade steps, every 10 years or so. And we think we're right at the edge of another one just now. So if you're as old as me, you may have worked on something like command line interface, teletext, IRC, even, you know, from the 70s when I started very, very early programming. I'm that old. You had things, character mode we call it now, but it had various forms that long ago. 10 years on, we were into things like Windows, Mac that made interfaces richer, much more easy input, output, and understanding of what you could do, which jumped onto web, which democratized it, made it easier for anyone to build an interface in any place, networked it all together so the information was connected properly, which led to smartphone, which is really why we're here today at droidCon, if you think about it, but that's 10 years ago. And smartphones, we're not just talking about technology, we're talking about the expectation that you can reach to your pocket for a piece of information that you need to know in a given context at a given time, but the expectation is, because networking's got to where it is, because technology is smaller and portable and powerful, the expectation is there permanently that you can find what you want. We believe the next step in this chain, in this staircase of technology, is the voice interface. And we think that the expectation will be that you don't reach for something anymore, you just speak to your environment and get the answer you're looking for. That the connections and the information are there anyway. How you interface and access it is what's changing. And you converse with the environment to get what you want, instead of pressing buttons, going back to the previous point. That's what we're talking about today, and that's what we're hoping to achieve with Amazon Alexa, and you as developers inputting to it. But don't take our word for it necessarily. I mean, there's various things we can step through to prove the point. Forrester Research went through this with mobile many years ago, and they got to the point about 3 years ago as a definition of a mobile moment, a point in time and space when someone pulls out a mobile device to get what they want in their immediate context, the second top step in the previous slide. Now take that point for a second and think how that might be transformed with a voice interface. A classic thing might be if you're watching sport on television. Many of us, certainly I do, you're watching something, you need to know a fact about what you're watching. It might be football. How many corner kicks have we had? How many free kicks? What have I missed? You might be catching up. Normally at the moment, people do what this guy's doing on the screen, reach for a phone, search for it in some fashion, maybe reach for an app. But it's not really a natural thing. If you were in the pub or if you've got friends in the room, you would ask them. So why not just shout at the television? If the television is capable of providing the answer, which you as developers ought to be able to do, because you've got the information, you've put it in an app, you've put it in a website possibly, shout at the TV and receive the answer in your environment. Just hear it over the commentary for a second. That's a very obvious use case which builds on the mobile moment that was defined for apps not too long ago. I don't think we're that far away from achieving it. So we believe voice represents the next big disruption in technology. We're trying to prove the point with you. So what we're going to go through is why voice, which is what we're going through now, why Alexa, and why do it now. So that's what we're going to step through in the next 20 minutes or so. Kathy Perel wrote the best-selling book on voice interfaces in Amazon.com. Designing Voice User Interfaces, a very, very highly recommended book. And she talks through the point of this. And the last line's the important one. We want to make it that we have to act less like computers and more like people when we deal with technology. And you can only do that by conversing with it, really, because, again, we're going to build on this point a lot. We talk to our pets and TVs. Our royal family, quite famously in the UK, talk to flowers because they think it makes them grow faster. This is how we live. So talking to things is natural to us, and we should treat computers the same way. Kathy Perel wrote the whole book trying to make this point. This is from the last page of the book. I'd highly recommend you look at it. So don't just take our word. There are many other people that will tell you about it. And how we got into this in the first place and how we started to make this point was with the Amazon Echo 2.5 years ago, which was a technology that made it easier to converse with a box in the corner, going back to grey boxes that we had keyboards plugged into and things like that. We created a device that had the first real consumer-led far-field microphone array, as we call it. So all the little gold beads at the top of the circuit board that you see there are microphones facing in 7 directions. The important point being that one of them is in use speaking to you. So if you ever use an Echo, many people have an Echo or some Alexa device. Some or two. One or two, okay. So when you speak to the Echo, you notice the light bends towards you from the top of the device. That is one of the microphones forming a beam to your voice. The other microphones are not switched off at that point. They're actually listening to the environment to throw away the other noise and have a more pure form of speech, pure form of listening to what you're saying. So that is the first point to improve speech recognition and aid the conversation so it's more understandable to the device and has a better chance of understanding what you're saying, which is step one in all of this. You know, if you don't get the words, then there's no conversation. The meaning of the words is separate. But this was our first go at putting Alexa in a room. And this is one of the reasons it's a success, because the technology made it better to be understood. We've opened up others since, from the Echo to the Echo Tap to the Echo Dot to Echo Tap's on sale in the US, not here unfortunately, but certainly the Fire TV and Fire tablets more recently have Alexa inside them. So we've tried to put it into different parts of the home. They're not all far field. They're things you maybe speak directly to, which is slightly different. But we just tried to get Alexa in front of more people, because the more people use it, the more it's going to improve and understand more things. And that's a very important way to open out the Alexa service to everyone. Customers love Alexa, and I've got one proof of that. And if anybody's seen this slide before, please don't spoil it. But can anybody think what that number might represent? Any guesses near the front that I might be able to hear? 5-star reviews. Not quite. We have quite a lot of them, but that's not the number. Invocations per minute. No. Oh, right. So close. So Alexa, I love you. If you love someone, what would you do next? Well, maybe don't answer that. Remove that other thought from your head for a second. So marriage proposals is the fact. So when we say customers love Alexa, we're trying to develop the point that people speak to technology like humans. Marriage proposals, sadly I don't know the German for that, please excuse me. Alexa, will you marry me is a very common thing. We take anonymous tests of what people say to make sure it's understood so we can learn and develop what Alexa understands. Marriage proposals is a very obvious one that people have got to, but it proves the point about humanizing. Then you've got people like my friend here. I'm not going to say what he's doing, you can see for yourself. But if he knew relationships were this easy, he would have married 30 years ago. Now he has Alexa, there is no need. Proof again that he's probably taken it a little bit too far, but he loves Alexa that much. We've had good press reaction to, and this, promise you, we're not doing a sales pitch here, but it just proves we've got some credibility. The press are a tough crowd, especially the tech press, so we've got some good reviews over the years, and that's been maintained. It's important to us that we look credible in what we're doing, not just that customers love it, because that's why we start, but we've got some backup that we're doing it the right way. So why voice? Developed the point earlier on. But we started years ago inside Amazon with a lot of Star Trek fans. How many people recognize that? There must be a few of you. So we started with the notion within Amazon, because there's a lot of Star Trek fans, that you should be able to replicate the ship computer, computer do something, whatever it was. And that's why you can now say computer instead of Alexa, because it's taken the point to its extreme. But the thought was years ago, this could happen. We actually did a workshop in Cambridge in the UK about a month ago, where somebody actually wrote a paper in 1969 about pretty much what Alexa became. So it's been in the mind of people that long because he watched Star Trek and wrote it as a thesis 40 years ago nearly. So we're glad this has worked, and this is why we started it. But based on that notion, we believe that voice could be everywhere. And if you think about the obvious cases for that, cars are a head start. So clearly your hands are tied when you drive a car, or they ought to be. So it's a natural thing, but not just things that cars might do just now, which might be audio, radio, and things that are fairly obvious, sat-nav, possibly. What you're gaining is the benefit of everything Alexa offers, not just the things obvious to a car. Any other service that developers provide or that Amazon provides will be available in the car. In the kitchen, which I think is the second highest use case of Alexa skills and services, which may start with a timer, but as you get used to the habit form of speaking to the thing in the corner, suddenly you ask it for a recipe. Suddenly you ask what goes with that. I'm working with some guys that are doing a skill to tell you what wine to serve with a particular food or particular meal. Very obvious use cases that will only extend as people use them and think of more. And smart home. If you visit IFA, if you have the chance, there's tons of smart home stuff. I think we're in 45 different stands have Alexa-enabled smart home services in them, from everything from fridges to heating to lighting, you name it. There's a shower that runs on Alexa, which we didn't know about until Friday, which is amazing. So please have a look at these things. These are the cases that we think prove the point. And Walt Mossberg, again, not just to take our for it, Walt Mossberg, formerly of The Verge, who retired about 2 months ago, said this in his final article. I mean, Walt is the guy that Steve Jobs used to go to when he had an idea, just to prove it wasn't crap. So Walt said this in his final column: ambient computing, the transformation of the environment, so technology doesn't seem to be there at all, proves these previous things, that Alexa is in the environment of what you're doing at the time, and that's really what we're trying to get to. So why Alexa? Having built on the point of voice, why work with us? We provide the Alexa service, which is the cloud service that powers both the skills kit, which is how you develop services for Alexa that you think, your content, your APIs if you have them, your services such as smart home. On the other side, which I don't work directly on, so we're not going to dwell on it too much, we have the Alexa voice service, which allows you to take everything on the left-hand side that Alexa does and everything that Amazon provides and put it into your own hardware, which is where we get to things like Alexa-powered refrigerators and showers and so on. That's where that comes from. So 2 sides to it. Lives in the cloud. We add speech recognition, and we add the capability for you as developers to apply your model of natural language understanding so that when somebody says, Alexa, ask skill name to do something, we know you define, because you've defined, we know what the person is going to say and how to deal with it and how to pass that request to your skill. And that's really how it works. And we'll go into that a little bit more. So we provide this for free, 2 powerful frameworks to let everybody take part in the Alexa service and hopefully extend it out to many more things over time. We've got somewhere with this in the last 2.5 years. So when I started doing these talks, which isn't that long ago, the number was 3,000 or so skills. As of today, it's just over 20,000, and it's climbing at that sort of rate. So 20,000 skills built by developers, not built by us, on the skills kit, such as people like these all over the world, different services, some in Germany, some UK, many US. So it's starting to prove the point that this is scaling very quickly because it's reasonably easy to do and it's reasonably easy to enter, especially as app developers if you've got the content already. Other hardware is starting to happen quickly too. So people like Control4 we met yesterday, Magenta, T-Mobile's smart home. Many of these people are at IFA demonstrating what they do, but this is the Alexa voice service being plugged into many other things. Some examples just to prove that point: lights, the fridge, which is very good fun. Cars, there's mobile phones on our booth at IFA, and I think there's 4 in the market now, mobile phones that have Alexa baked into the OS. Watches, many speakers. We don't mind if you don't buy an Echo, if you buy one by somebody else, Lenovo, for example, that's perfectly fine. They're all really, the voice service is the same to us, the technology may be different. So many things, and we've actually merchandised skills as well in the same way that you could buy music or DVDs or books from Amazon. You now browse skills and have skills recommended to you in the same way. So if you've got a particular interest, we ought to be able to surface it to you as an Amazon customer. So why do it now? Having told you why voice and what Amazon provides to help you do it, why do it today? So, and why has this happened all of a sudden? Because it feels like it's just crept up on us in the last 2 years or so. It's all about the march of speech recognition. So if you do the background research on this, speech recognition really got going in the 1950s. So Bell Labs in the US built a phone dialer, which understood the digits 0 to 9, because the alternative at the time was a rotary dialer, which was quite horrible to use, especially if you used it often. So they developed a voice dialer. It took 10 further years for IBM to make that into a calculator by adding 4 more words accurately enough that it worked reliably. You can see how that's climbed up to now. And we're in this phase in the green bit to the far right where we believe we got to, as an industry, about 95% accuracy, recognizing any spoken phrase. But that's just the words. There's an important distinction between the words and the meaning of them, so we'll come to that. But we think just beyond that, towards the 99, is the next 2 to 3 years, where we get from 95, which still has a bit of tiny friction to it, to 99, where virtually everything you say is understood. That's the point of mass adoption. In the same way it took smartphones to really drive mobile, make them useful, and smartphones opened up to developers to make them even more useful. We think that's the next 3 years that this is going to take off. This is the why now, because the time as developers is to get in before everybody else does, clearly. And that's where we think we are, between the 95, 99 point. And it's because technology's changed, and it's advancing so quickly that we start with speech recognition, which we just talked about, which is now at that high point. It's important to understand that speech recognition is just a chain of words, right? So if you've got the words in English, there, in a sentence, that could be 3 completely different things. The context of the words, the location of the words, and the sequence of them defines the meaning of them. It's what we call an intent. And the intent is what you need to know to be able to answer and maintain a conversation. So we, as Amazon, asked developers to define that NLP stage, the natural language processing and understanding, based on the sort of questions and conversations you're going to have with your customers and your users. And that's all enabled really by democratizing technology, as we say, which is Echoes being available to everyone, the ones we showed earlier on, other people selling devices with Alexa in them. The more people use it, the more it improves, the more people buy it, the more people use it again, and it snowballs. It's what we call a flywheel in Amazon. You start to get effects from both sides of the market. The more people use it, the more people build for it, the better it gets. Cloud services and machine learning, artificial intelligence are really just the tools that help us do that more quickly. And you know, Amazon has Amazon Web Services, which allows us to scale this very quickly and very efficiently. Once we get through these processes of more people doing things, we can maintain the pace of improvement and do it very quickly. And that's really technology and Moore's law at the end of the day, applying itself to voice and getting us there a lot quicker. This is what we call the Alexa Skills Kit, the result of all these things we just talked about. What we offer to you as developers to build things based on your content, your services. And it's fairly simple. We talked about the Alexa service that lives in the cloud in the middle of all of this. You as a consumer, as an Echo user, for example, will say something to the device, which is effectively recorded and streamed to the Alexa service and transcribed. At that point, we apply our speech recognition technology and the natural language model that you have supplied as a developer to understand what things you are looking for. That passes through Alexa to your back end. So you have to build some code to do this, but if you come to our workshops later today and then tomorrow, you'll see that the coding part is really, hopefully, the easy bit, and we make it easy for you to adopt. The hard bit, and the thing that's new to most people, is defining the type and the nature of a conversation that the back end responds to. So hopefully the back end will be quick, but building a good conversation is something different. You then have to respond from your back end to the user, either through Alexa's voice or through an audio voice or an audio file that you supply. We don't mind if you don't want to use Alexa's voice. It's easier to do it, but you can provide your own if you wish. Radio stations often provide their bulletins with pre-recorded newsreader voices, which is perfectly fine. You can also send a card, which is something we have. If you use an Echo, you may have used the companion product, the app or the website that sets it up. You can send cards to that as well. And that's a way to leave behind a little bit more information than a voice response may do if you need to respond quickly, which you ought to. That's sent back to the device which received the request in the first place. So if you have 10 Echoes you're logged into, only the one you spoke to, the one that's nearest in effect, receives the response. And this is an entire sequence within a conversation. And every conversation passes through this sequence every time you say something. We do that in about half a second because we're trying to build conversations here. We're not trying to build apps and services. We're trying to build conversations. And we shouldn't be getting in the way of those being unnatural. So we try to do it quickly and make sure that sequence isn't intervening in a good flow of conversation. Building an Alexa skill based on all of that is reasonably straightforward as a concept, but I'll try and explain an example of it. We normally demo this, but in the interest of time, hopefully you'll walk with me and hopefully understand how this works. So the first thing you need for a skill is an invocation name. So if you've used Alexa, you may know you can say something like, Alexa, ask BBC to play Radio 1, or something along these lines. Ask service for function. It's that sort of process. The bit you're asking is called the invocation name. It's analogous to the name of the app you press on your phone or the web address of a site you might visit. That's the voice service's home. Invocation name. In this case, we're going to call it Coffee Now, which is a fake Starbucks if you want to go that way. So ask Coffee Now to do something. The doing something is called an intent. And the intent is defined as a thing. You're not at conversation at this point. You're just getting the intent, the function that the person's asking for. So in this case, the function may be to order coffee. It may be, how are my loyalty points going? Can I have a cake, which may be something different. So that function is mapped exactly to a code function on your back end, one-to-one. So every intent has a code function which delivers the response. To get to that function, you need a phrase that delivers it. So Alexa, ask Coffee Now for something. That phrase may be, order a small cappuccino. And you can imagine the variations that contains just by the word small and cappuccino. You can see how that might spin out to a lot of things. I've seen a model with 270,000 phrases in it for something reasonably straightforward, just to cover all the use cases that came up and all the different phrases people said. We ask you as developers to define those in long form so we don't have to guess. Alexa will try and guess whatever the person says, but the more you tell us, the more accurate the listening's going to be and the more accurate the response will be at the end of the day. Within that, though, you can see small and cappuccino as two things. The coffee size, the coffee type, which are the two in that phrase. You may add milk, you may add a flavor on the end. The reason we do this is one of our colleagues has a fairly robust coffee order with about 18 different things in it, and it's really hard to actually type into a mobile app. So it's a good example of what voice might bring you. So if your order is a small half this, that with vanilla and no that and something else, that takes about 1.5 minutes to type into something like the Starbucks ordering app. If you walked into the shop, you would just say the thing, and the person would hopefully understand what you want. Coffee shops maybe don't always, but you get the understanding of what the person says, and you deliver it. And it's so much easier than having to type or tap. This is the point we're trying to prove. Then we think at the end, my guess is for a good skill, about 20% is the coding of it. The rest is the definition and the understanding of what the person's going to ask for and how you respond to that, how you ask the next question, if you need to get what they really want. This is the basic run-through of a skill and how it works. This one we've built in 10 minutes in workshops before, just to prove the point of how easy the coding part is, but the definition's hard. We provide tools to make it easier. So we provide software development kits, we provide access to the API documentation, we provide many, many samples. If you come to the workshops in the next 2 days, you'll see lots of this and different things that we prove are possible quickly. But to get you into the swing of developing things, we don't want you to be defining long JSON objects if you're brand new to this. So we provide a thing called the Skill Builder, which lets you use an interface to define a conversation in a much more structured way, which hopefully you'll see if you visit us and do that today, tomorrow. We give a lot away to help you start. We want you to think about that principle of building a conversation on the basics that you need to know to be able to do that. So any skill you build ought to provide high value, because people are coming to this fresh. If they come from mobile phones, you may have got into habits and things you've got used to. So when you move to a voice service, you ought to get what you want quickly and have a value. You're not doing it for the sake of it. Alexa does come with some frivolous things like providing jokes, and some of them are actually quite bad, but you've got some level of value for that. Skills you develop ought to provide a value the first time the person uses it, so they form the repeat behavior and come back. And high value doesn't have to be too much. Skills should evolve over time, like apps do. You iterate apps, you think about things you want to add, watch what the users do, and develop them. Users should be able to speak to any skill spontaneously and naturally. They shouldn't have to train themselves, and you shouldn't have to train them what to say. So if your skill is coffee now, it ought to understand one of the many ways somebody might order a coffee, and there are thousands of them, as we found out with these sort of events. But you should be able to listen and respond to any one the person says. You'll never get all of them first time, but spontaneous and natural is the point. The user says what they think is right for the type of skill you offer. And to develop that point a little bit, Alexa should understand most things that people say to your skill. If you don't understand, you should have a graceful way to respond back and ask them for what they didn't say, and just build that as a conversation. And skills should always respond in the appropriate way. So if you haven't quite understood, as I just said, then there's a graceful way to carry on the conversation. Or if the person does get what they want, gracefully give it to them in the quickest and most simple way so they understand they got what they wanted. And don't do everything at once. You wouldn't do this building an app, I hope. So you don't go in on day one and try and do everything, which I've seen people try to do. Somebody came to us with a skill they'd built, very, very good in theory, but we couldn't even open it. It had about 18 different types of intent the skill might offer, but you couldn't open it in the first place, which is ridiculous. So they tried to run before they got the basic bit right. So if you crawl to start with, think of the very core thing your skill will do, and analyze based on that very early thing what people do with it, things they ask for that you weren't able to deliver, and then build based on using things like analytics and standard things you would do to build web and apps. Deal with what they want and add to it. Add a bit more, innovate, tell them what's possible, and then once you've got that basic service up and running, build on it. You can run from that point. And skills are actually getting to the point 2 years in that they're starting to run with a bit more functionality. And it might be you start, let's say, a traffic skill. Give an estimated arrival from home to work, which doesn't take too much friction. Once you've defined what home and work are, you just give them that simple thing every day. That's what in the UK our national train service does. You tell it what your commute is. And the one phrase it answers to is, what's my commute today? Is my train on time? Nice and simple. You might then develop that. If it's a road traffic service, you may add some live things like accidents, temporary constructions, diversions you might need to make. So a little bit more addition to it and a little bit more service. And then over time, proactively alert. So if and when Alexa gets to the point you're able to notify a user, for example, which isn't there today, but it's something that may evolve, provide alternate routes. Tell them before they ask, or tell them a slightly augmented answer to the question they asked you. Give them that little bit extra. As long as you're not confusing them, it's still an appropriate response, to go back to the previous slide. And there's many cases, many entry points you may actually think about with this. So it might be at one end, you have some what we call low utility, which may be browsing. Tell me about something. And you may have seen the Alexa Prize, where you converse with Alexa for 20 minutes on any given topic, and the conversation flows its way through. And that's low utility, but it's got value in its own way. Something we call a telling point. So Alexa, tell me about a specific thing. Tell me about dogs. It's not a generic skill, but you've asked for a specific thing, you get a specific answer. Through to searching, where you've said, ask if ticket vendor has particular band for particular day. That's very high value, very specific query with a very specific answer. That's what we might call a one hit. So you ask straightforward phrase to get a straightforward answer. And then at the highest end, the highest utility might be turn on the heating. You don't really need a response to that, because you should be able to feel it. Turn on the light is a visual thing. All Alexa needs to say is okay, and you know if it's worked or not, because hopefully the thing you asked for is in front of you. So the highest utility could have the lowest conversation, but it's still the most valuable thing you can offer. So think about all of that. And these are the design principles that are new if you've not dealt with voice before, if you've been in apps and touching and typing and things like that. These are the principles you haven't really thought about. So voice interfaces work best when they focus and give a quick response. So you see the examples we just gave. The heating response may be next to nothing, but it's the most valuable and the best response you can give. So think about what's right for the user that's in front of you. Start with a simple function and the crawl, walk, run definition. But something that's good as a voice interface, not for the sake of it. Think of the thing that works as a voice response interface, but is the use case that deals with it best. So if you've got something that's the most obvious one, start with that and make sure it works for voice. Do the one thing very well and make the skill smarter, because that's what Alexa does. When we add our own things, to Alexa, Amazon services. This is how we do it. We start with very basic things and develop them out, but also tell the user that there's something else to do. So if they ask for the basic thing, tell them the slightly more advanced ones there the second, third time they come back. Make it a repeat behavior encouragement. Tell the users there's always something more to do. And that's how we live as Alexa. We develop the service day to day, improve, as we say, we make her smarter, and that's exactly how we do it. Enable beta testing, something we just opened up a few months ago. Developers asked us many times, how do I get people to test my skill? I've got friends with Echoes, but I have to publish it first. And if I publish it and it's not right, people won't like it. So we open up a way to give access to other people, your skill, before it goes live, to give you a chance to do that improvement before you've published it to the wide world, because you don't want to go out on day one and get a bad rating. You want to improve it before you get to that point. So this is what we enabled. To start with, you can invite 500 people to beta test your skill for 90 days. And then you get feedback from people you trust because you've invited them. And that's a way to really get that feedback loop before you publish. I'm going to close, because I've been told to try and get through this fairly quickly. I think we're just about on time. A little bit of fun that we saw in the US market a few months ago was something called Amazon Echo Silver, which was effectively a joke that old people aren't able to use services like Alexa. The first joke was they couldn't remember Alexa's name, so the joke was they developed a wooden Echo looking like that. You can see what it is, which answers to pretty much any name in the dictionary of human names and converses in funny ways that old people understand. And it's making the point old people can't use technology. I mean, people think about this as a young person's game. The early adopters are the people who will come to this and probably the most likely users. I mean, years ago, my son started to touch the TV, and he touches anything that looks like a screen because he had a tablet, age 2, I think. Now he shouts at things. So it's an obvious case that people learn and try to shout. If you go to IFA, people are shouting all sorts of things that they probably shouldn't yet. But you can see the expectation, which we talked at right at the start, is already there. This was the point that old folk will never get this. But if you meet people like my own mother, who's 77, and lost her husband recently, so Alexa is the only friend in the house, effectively. She talks to Alexa the entire day. She started by crawling, as we said in the previous slides. She asked for music, which is what she wanted. Now she's asking all sorts of things, because she's got used to it. And this is the point. So there was an experiment of sorts in the US where old people's homes were given Amazon Echo Dots in every room. And the old people were not told what to do with them in particular. They were just told to converse. Ask for what they thought their next useful thing might be, whether it's the weather in this case, or music, or news, or whatever it might be. Lois provided this feedback to us, aged 89. Lois, who, not disabled, but she's getting on in life. It's just a little bit harder for her to get up in the morning and open the curtains just to see if it's raining. Because if it was raining, her day was completely ruined, and many old people are like that. My grandmother used to open the curtains every day and then go back to bed if it was raining. This is what she did. Now she tells us, not only is it easier just to say, will it rain today, because it makes her happy if it won't, it's better for her to ask Alexa. So she said, life is more enjoyable with Alexa. And that's really, going back to the very start about humanizing technology, what we're aiming to do in the first place. And it's starting to happen when you see people volunteer that sort of feedback to us a couple of months ago. And then you see people that use it of all sorts of shapes and sizes. These are my old colleagues in my previous job when we built an Alexa travel agent skill. Telling them nothing other than ask for a flight and work your way through until you've been able to get the flight you want. And on the left, they were completely befuddled, if that's a word everybody understands. They didn't know what they were doing. For about a minute, 10 minutes in, not knowing they were being photographed, they are what you see on the right-hand side, smiling, because it worked. And it worked more than they expected it to. It worked quicker than they expected. And poor old Michael, who hates this picture, but I use it all the time, that's his genuine reaction to finding what Alexa was capable of and finding it very quickly. For a thing he does routinely, because these people fly all over the world for their work, this made their life better. And they're all Echo users now as a result. So it just shows the human part of it is perfectly possible. If you think about everything we've said so far this morning, work with it, these are the sort of results you can expect without too much effort over time. If you want to learn more about that, you can join the legend Jeff this afternoon, and that's a lovely picture. It's the only one I was able to get, sorry. Join our workshops this afternoon elsewhere in the building, then Andrea tomorrow going a little bit more advanced. Bring your laptop and we'll actually take you through building your first couple of skills and hopefully get a bit more advanced to do more things with them tomorrow. We have other things on in Germany, so I got the date wrong there, Düsseldorf and Berlin in the next 2-3 weeks, and other things online. Sasha and Andrea are here for the next 2 days, so you can come and approach them. They're sitting in the middle here just now, but that's their pictures if you want to find them. Please come and speak to us about Alexa. We'd love you to join us. Other than that, thank you all very much for listening.
Thank you so much, David. We have some time, if you're prepared to take some questions. If you have questions, please proceed to one of the microphones, which we have in the aisles here, and tell who you are and ask your question. Nobody is asking. Yes, there is one guy with a question.
Hi, thanks for your presentation. I actually have an Echo and I really love it.
Cool.
Probably 2 questions. One was, one thing I'm very paranoid about is, Big Brother listening in. So if you can probably talk about our data, our privacy. And also secondly, I just saw that you guys are joining forces with Microsoft Cortana. So how does that, I think it came last week that you're working with them. So how does that sort of change the game and sort of what can we expect from that?
So the privacy angle is important to us as well. If you use an Echo, you'll know you can turn the microphone off at any given time. And there's sort of what we call a triple lock to it. So that's one. The second one is the microphone's only listening when you wake it up. So when you say Alexa or one of the other words, that's what we call the wake word. That's the only time the hardware is actually recording anything else. It's only listening for the words Alexa. And the other thing is you always know what's said to it because in the companion app, you can see the history of everything that's been said to your device. So it's pretty important to us, but that's the 3 ways we kind of prove that we're keeping it private to you as users. On the other thing with Alexa and Cortana, I'll give you our boss's answer where he said that there'll be things that are more tuned to Microsoft and Cortana, maybe more enterprise level things that Microsoft offers, and it's better if they deliver it directly. So Alexa asking Cortana for something that we don't build, it's a perfectly good way to access other information. You're still working with Alexa and the Alexa service, you're just having a bit of a shortcut to things that other people haven't done yet. So hopefully that's a good answer for you.
Do we? Yes, we do. Does the microphone work here in this?
Nope. Hello. Also, now it's working. I would like to ask if Alexa can ask you questions back. So maybe if you order coffee, she asks, do you want milk or sugar in it? Is it possible? There's a conversation?
Yeah, if you go to the workshop, we'll teach you how to do that. But essentially, once you ask something, the response can be a question. You leave the session open. You're then perfectly welcome to ask the customer for something else. They answer back. You can go through a loop of conversation until you get what you need, but that's perfectly usual.
And the second one, does it work offline? So
it's a cloud service. Really, I didn't mention that strongly enough. It's a cloud service. Everything goes up to an API and down again. So currently, it's online only.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Perhaps I may dare to ask one. I'm not a developer, I'm not an expert, but some months ago I think I read about a cooperation between BMW and Amazon about using Alexa in BMW cars, and I read in some security blog that there might be some security issues. For instance, passers-by saying, Alexa, please open this car. This nice BMW, I want to drive away with it, or whatever. In which way are you addressing this security issues? I mean, the more skillful Alexa gets in terms of speaker-independent voice recognition and natural language processing and everything, the risk mounts up.
So there's ways we do things like account linking, for example, where only you, if you're logged in with an app or something like that, get access to do things like turning on the car. I suspect there are better ways to deal with that, and soundproofing the car cabin. It's not something I'm close to in terms of how it works, but security is always the first thing we think about. It may be that the skill may not work inside the car on day one. It might be a house skill to start the car from inside, and it has to be within range of a Wi-Fi or something. Don't know the details of that, but it will be important.
I meant the car only as an example, but
okay.
I mean, in the Internet of Things, lots of things can be controlled by Alexa. And
There's various things we are more careful about in terms of how you access a skill. Anything that deals with personal information, for example, has to be dealt with through PIN numbers and things like that. So we're always careful with it.
we have one more question over here.
So my question, you spoke about Alexa can learn from the user. So when does this happen? Or like during the skills component you showed us? Or?
So Alexa all the time is receiving words, and users are welcome to say if they didn't get what they want. So there's actually a two-way mechanism. I showed somebody this at IFA yesterday where they didn't know it, that something misbehaved in a skill, and you're actually very easily able to report to the skill that your thing didn't work. So the developers, we take that ourselves to make sure the speech recognition worked. But it's a constant learning cycle of that sort of improvement where we look at what people say, was there an answer to it, was there no answer, and we work within Amazon heavily to improve that day by day. Does that make sense?
For example, if I order once a coffee, then Alexa will know my preferences and...
It can do, yes. So one of the things you would do as a developer is if you order a coffee 3 times, the next time you visit, you probably shouldn't be asked what you want. You proactively say, do you want the same one again? And there are ways to store the last answer so you know what the user actually wants as a repeat visitor. That's perfectly possible. Okay.
Thanks a lot.